This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Cindy. I have determined that we do have a quorum of the Planning and Zoning Commission in attendance, with the members Davis, Noel, DeVos, Fichtner, and Rosso attending in a virtual format. I'm Russ Willey, the Community Development Director, and then Cindy Moulton is doing the engineering back at the home studio at City Hall. And as I said earlier, Joe Urban expressed his regrets and he was unable to join us tonight. And I will remind you, we do have a vacancy with Kelly Henry's relocation to North Mankato. Here's my packet. Given it's the January meeting, I will call the meeting to order. I think I already did that at 5:30. I will ask for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Willey, I will so move.
We have a motion by Rosso. Is there a second?
Davis seconds.
We have a second by Davis. All in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. At this moment, I would ask for nominations for the position of chairperson of the Planning and Zoning Commission for calendar year 2021. Are there any nominations pending?
DeVos will nominate Andrew Davis for chair.
We have a motion.
Well, I was just thinking Scott, you know.
Well, you can nominate Scott if you want.
So we have a motion to nominate Davis for chair. Is there a second?
Second.
No, second by Rosso. I would ask, are there further nominations?
Okay.
I feel obligated to ask one more time. Hearing none, all in favor of electing Andrew Davis as chairperson for 2021, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Chairman Davis, would you like me to continue?
Sure. Can I make a speech first about the importance of planning and zoning in our democracy?
Yeah, you actually could. You're the chair.
That's fine. I'll do it later. Go ahead.
Okay.
I have a question. Can we contest any of the votes towards Andrew? Do we need two sides to contest this, or and do we have to have 2 hours of debate to discuss it? Or
No, I've certified the results and they're final.
okay.
I would ask, is there nominations for the position of vice chairperson? And I'll note that Joe Urban had been vice chair in the previous couple of years, I believe it was. So nominations, please.
Mr.
I would
Willey,
nominate. Go ahead, Ken.
Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I was just thinking about Ken, or excuse me, Scott. Were you thinking the same thing, Ken?
Yes, I was actually.
Scott, I would nominate Scott to be the vice chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, if you could accept.
Is that a second to that, Ken?
I certainly will second that, yes.
Okay, motion by Davis, second by Rosso to nominate Fichtner as vice chair. I should ask, are there any further nominations? And I will ask one more time. Hearing none, all in favor of Scott Fichtner serving as vice chairperson of the Planning and Zoning for 2021, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Scott, I would note there's no additional pay for holding an office.
I thought
Scott,
the city had the money.
Scott and Andy, both, if you could get your lawn signs down though within a couple of days, it would be.
I will advise, I was able to ride the vice chairmanship of the EDA to the city council seat. I think that had a critical impact on my race. So.
Okay. Moving forward, the minutes of the December 3, 2020 meeting were in your packet. Are there any corrections or alterations to be noted? Hearing none, would anyone move approval of the minutes?
Noel will move.
We have a motion by Noel. Is there a second?
Fichtner will second.
And a second by Fichtner. Further discussion?
Mr. Willey, if I may.
Yes, you may.
At the bottom of the first page of the minutes, you talked about the pending meeting between the administrator and the attorney for Mr. Dirks. Has that been taken place at this point or not? and were things resolved?
Not unless it has taken place in the very recent past. So
Okay.
I know when it last, Mr. Prafke and I missed our weekly meeting, and that's usually where I'd be brought up to speed. So if it hasn't happened within the last week or so, Ken, then I don't know if it has.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
any other items to note or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes as presented for December 3, 2020, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. At this point, we have a public hearing scheduled to consider the preliminary plat of Windsor Pond 4th edition. I will note that Nathan Hermer, the engineer who's been working on this for ISG on behalf of the developer, has joined us. Thank you, Nathan, and welcome. I'm not going to go through the public hearing rules, as it seems we don't have an audience today. So I will go into my staff report once I find where I put it. Okay, as I said, this is the 4th addition to Windsor Pond. The owner is Windsor Homes LLC, which is Mike Volk of Volk Construction. There have been 3, as you would suggest, 3 previous additions to Windsor Pond. The original owner was Valley View Land Company LLC, and they ultimately then completed, I think it was the first 2 phases, and then sold to Mr. Volk and Windsor Homes LLC. This is the slab on grade patio home development. It's been very popular, and I would say it's very predictable. Then the developer does record private covenants that regulate the land use within that neighborhood above and beyond what the city's zoning ordinance would require. You are asked tonight to consider both the preliminary and the final plat. The property is zoned R2, 1 and 2 family residential. As you can see on the preliminary plat, you have lot 1 with 7, or block 1 with 7 lots, block 2 with 5 lots, for a total of 12 new lots for development. You will note that the balance, or the remaining portion of the land, then would be designated as Outlot A. And as you're aware from the North Traverse Green, an outlot then is not independently developable until it is subject to the platting process that we are going through tonight. You will also note that the development completes Victoria Street, which would be the east-west street through the neighborhood, and then it does provide for the continued extension of Windsor Lane. You will note that there was no proposed temporary cul-de-sac on Windsor Lane in this instance, and that's because the proper traffic movements can be accomplished with the completion of Victoria Street. So that temporary cul-de-sac that was shown at the end of phase 3 was there for emergency vehicle turnaround, snowplow turnaround, and things of that nature. But again, given that Victoria Street provides the intersection at the terminus of Windsor Lane, it's been determined that's not necessary. You can see the lots are generally in the 10, 11, 12,000 square foot range, but block 1, lot 6 is essentially twice as wide, and that is essentially a pre-sold lot, and so that's being established at that width at the request of the buyer. I would note that in one of the previous phases, 2 lots had been combined and the interior easement had been vacated. So there is another example of a lot that wide within the neighborhood. And I can't remember, I think it was a widow that moved off a farm and came into town, and she wanted a little bit bigger property. So there is some precedent, and your zoning ordinance does not regulate maximum lot size, but rather minimum lot size. I believe the final phase, or what would be Windsor Pond 5th edition, would be completed in the next phase, as Outlot A would be further developed. Outlot A then has the outlet onto Traverse Road, where you can see where that is located, and then Windsor Lane would continue to make that intersection with Traverse Road. All of the lots meet the minimum requirement as to size and the minimum frontage. Public Works Director Moulton and his staff, namely Jeff Knutson, have done the review of the utility standards, the street standards, and they do meet all of the adopted standards of the City Council. there is a stormwater pond that has already been established on Traverse Road. It does provide for the drainage easements between the lots, so it shows a 5 foot, and by the time it gets to the council, I believe it needs to be a 6 foot according to our standards, Nate. But we'll get that. They'll be the same as they were in the third phase, Nate. But I just caught that this afternoon, and I talked to Jeff Knutson, and he was going to get back to me, but we didn't have time to touch base. But it requires a 7 foot setback, so whether it's a 5 or a 6, it does not impact the developability of the lot at all. But that is typically where we provide some utility placement and oftentimes use that for the drainage. There will be a development agreement that the city council will be asked to consider when they consider the final plat. That would establish a parkland dedication fee of $8,073.80. And then the regional stormwater basin that would serve Windsor Pond and the larger watershed is planned on the 40 acres that is currently farmed at the intersection of Traverse and Sunrise Drive that is owned by 64 Sands LLC, which is the Pell interests. So when the first phase of Windsor Pond was done, they agreed to prepay their assessment for that regional stormwater basin. So in the development agreement, the developer will be obligated to pay the city $8,974.84 as its share of that future stormwater basin. The development agreement would also require that they reimburse the city up to $1,000 for city attorney Brandt's review of all of the documents and development agreements and such. And finally, development agreement would require that the construction of this phase be completed prior to October 31 of 2021. The city council is expected to consider the matter at their meeting on January 25 of 2021. At this point, it would be appropriate for me to answer questions, and then I'd open it up for the public hearing, which as you can see, I don't expect anyone from the public here to comment. So I will start with Chairman Davis. Do you have any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. No, thank you.
It's pretty straightforward, and it's it's exactly kind of what we've expected as it continues. As I said, it's been very predictable process, and it's gone very well. Mr. Volk has been nice to work with and easy to work with, and we always appreciate Nate's help from ISG. The next would be Planning Commission member Noel.
Nothing to add. Just to say that I feel like this addition has been such a wonderful addition to St. Peter. It's a beautiful neighborhood. The homes are nice and really very attractive. And so I think it's been a great addition to St. Peter. Thank
you. Member DeVos.
Nothing. Well, a quick question. Is this style of home more appealing to more of a retirement, more of the retirement community perspective?
Yeah, I think generally the demographic out there is the over 60, maybe even majority over 65.
They seem to be filling up fairly well, so which should in turn lead to more other housing opening up. If we're looking at empty nesters who are downsizing, it might actually open up other houses for other families then in town as well. So I think it's great, and as Shannon said, they're beautiful. It's a great asset to the community. So
thank you very much. Vice Chairman Fichtner.
I think it's a good plan all the way around, and I have no questions.
Thank you. Member Rosso.
Simply delighted to see Mike doing another stage, and happy it's going to happen.
Okay. Nathan, we didn't try your microphone, but do you have anything to add?
No, I appreciate your guys' time. I don't have anything else to add.
It's always nice and comfort to have you there, Nate, in case there's questions I can't answer on the engineering end. So thank you for joining us.
Yep.
If there aren't any further questions, I will open it up to the public hearing, and it is 5:44 p.m. And I will note there are no members other than the members of the commission and staff, and then Nate Hermer representing Windsor Pond here. So Anticipating no public comment, I will close the public hearing then at 5:45 p.m. I will note that there is a resolution prepared for your consideration, members, on page 5 that would recommend that the City Council adopt the preliminary plat. Would anyone be inclined to move adoption of the resolution?
Ross
DeVos
also
will move.
moved.
I'm gonna
DeVos will
go with,
second.
I was gonna go with Rosso moved and DeVos seconded the motion. At this point, if there is any discussion to be had, please just turn on your microphone.
I do have one comment on my copy. On the very top line, it says T City. Just an extra T got put in there.
Oh, nice catch.
So yeah, if that's taken out, then it would be good.
Yep, did you get that, Nate? You want to mention that again,
Oh,
Scott?
sorry there. Where was that?
On the very top line of the for the preliminary plat, where it says City of St. Peter, there's a T in front of the word city.
Okay.
He'll find it. He'll find it. Thank you, Scott. Nice catch. Any other comment? If not, I will call the roll. Chairman Davis,
Aye.
Member Noel,
Aye.
Member DeVos,
Aye.
Member Fichtner,
Aye.
Member Rosso.
Aye.
Recommendation that City Council accept the preliminary plat. There's a resolution on page 6 recommending that the City Council prepare the final plat. The final plat is essentially a preliminary plat that doesn't have all the preliminary data on it. So you will notice that the contours aren't included on that. And there are a couple other engineering details like that. But the lot sizes, the roads and the streets are all in the right place and do reflect what was submitted with the preliminary plat. Would anyone be inclined to move the resolution recommending the council accept the final plat? Or are there questions or comments?
Fichtner will move the resolution.
Motion by Fichtner. Is there a second?
Davis will second.
And a second by Chairman Davis. Any further discussion? Please just open your microphone. Hearing none, I will call the roll call. Member Noel,
Aye.
Member DeVos,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Fichtner,
Aye.
Member Rosso,
Aye.
Chairman Davis.
Aye.
Thank you, members. As I mentioned earlier, the matter will be considered by the City Council at their January 25, 2021 meeting. Next item on your agenda is to undertake some title corrective actions at the request of Kwik Trip Inc. Kwik Trip Inc. has purchased what was originally developed as the former Seitzer Ford dealership, but it has most recently been Saints Bus Service and Anytime Fitness. They intend to undertake the demolition of the existing structure and asphalt mat, and then provide the construction of a Kwik Trip convenience store. The site is zoned as C4 Highway Service Commercial, and the standards of the Gateway overlay will be applied to the development. As they were looking at their ability to get title insurance, they had undertaken what's called an Alpha survey, and I included the whole darn thing for your review because I think some of you might not have ever seen one, and they're just fascinating, detailed documents. And so the Alpha survey identified 4 planning and zoning issues that they've asked to be undertaken. And the first one was there had been recently, I don't know if it's been there, it was there 6-9 months ago, an undersized, maybe 100 square foot billboard that I guess originally in the 80s advertised Hardee's restaurant, which is now Arby's. They received a variance from the setback from Highway 169 for the placement of that sign. And once they received a variance, they received a conditional use permit for the establishment of the billboard in that zoning district. Then, to illuminate the billboard, they provided the city with an easement to run an electrical wire and to maintain an electrical wire to provide the electricity for the light bulb to illuminate the sign. And then finally, When the Seitzer, HB Seitzer and Company, Inc. developed the property, the city entered into a development agreement, as is typical for the installation of the public utilities and other essential services and such, drainage and such matters. At this time, they have asked that the city council adopt resolutions: 1, eliminating the variance, which will no longer be necessary as the billboard will be removed; 2, negating the conditional use permit for the sign that won't exist on redevelopment; and 3, removing the electrical easement that will no longer be needed to eliminate a billboard that will no longer exist; and then 3, to release the property from the terms of the development agreement between HB Seitzer and Company, Inc., which regulated the development of the Ford dealership. As Kwik Trip would be developed, we will enter into a development agreement with Kwik Trip for the installation of the public utilities and public services necessary to serve the property. I will note that that when you look at that development, it will not have access to Highway 22 or Dot Avenue. MnDOT has already made that decision. As the property changes use, in this instance from a bus garage and Anytime Fitness to a convenience store, MnDOT has the opportunity to undertake an access control review. They have determined that an access in close proximity to both Old Minnesota and Highway 69 could become problematic as traffic levels would increase. The city staff then had asked if they would reconsider a right in, right out, similar to the Holiday McDonald's situation with a median, and they indicated that that would not be an acceptable option. So when the site is ultimately developed, the accesses will likely, well, if they're going to be accesses, they will be coming off Old Minnesota Avenue, and there are some pretty unique challenges with the grade there. But I have all the faith in the world in engineers to determine a solution that's appropriate and works well. So you are not asked to approve any type of a site plan. If it doesn't require any particular planning action, you will not necessarily see a site plan if it meets all the regulations of the zoning ordinance and other codes. So I've prepared a resolution where you would be recommending that the city council will eliminate the variance, eliminate the conditional use permit, essentially give away the easement that it provided, and then release them from the development agreement for the previous development. Are there any questions? It's a lot of bookkeeping, really, or housekeeping, cleaning, and some of the more tedious planning work that happens. But if there is a resolution on page 28 that would recommend that the council undertake those 4 actions, would anyone be inclined to move the resolution?
Yeah, I'll move the resolution. Davis.
Is there a second?
Noel will second.
A second by Noel. It's time for discussion. Was my explanation clear, or do you understand what you're asked to do? And I will start with Member DeVos.
Yeah, everything was clear, so.
Okay, Member Fichtner?
Yeah, everything was clear. It's just backing it off of all the conditional use and variance requirements.
Member Rosso? You're muted, Ken.
I'm sorry, just a quick comment. The title information from First American, second page, Schedule B, Part 1, just indicates a whole list of past due taxes. And I would just point out, and you guys are probably well aware that this was done, at least the title work was done on March 10th, which I'm assuming is the date that they checked the courthouse for the recordings. And obviously taxes were not due at that point. So I'm sure they're current at this time.
Yeah, I believe they have to bring the taxes current to transfer the property, or even pay the entire year. So.
And knowing the owners, I'm sure it's current already and just was not due yet at that point.
This was not your first Alta survey, Ken.
No, seen a lot of those.
They're such detailed. When the city acquired the theater building that we ultimately tore down, it said that there was an encroachment of 2 inches by the electrical outlet. So they are incredibly detailed, as they should be, because it's real estate and it does matter.
It really makes wonderful recreational reading.
Yeah, yes. Member Davis, any comments, questions?
No comments on this particular issue. I am concerned about, this is more of a traffic issue. You know, when I'm going to the east on Highway 22 and then turning right onto Old Minnesota Avenue, the intersection there with that driveway coming off my house, I always find it to be a tricky corner. So I just hope they pay attention to that wide driveway very close to 22 and increase traffic there. And I'm just concerned about that. But as it pertains to this motion, I'm obviously in favor.
Thank you. Member Noel.
Nothing further, thank you.
And I think that's the round through. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to say before? We have a motion in a second? Okay, that's why I'm doing discussion. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add before I call the roll? Hearing none. Member DeVos.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fichtner.
Aye.
Member Rosso.
Aye.
Member Davis.
Aye.
Member Noel.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carried. I believe I also have this on the council schedule for the 25th. But thank you much. The last item on the agenda is to consider the annexation of certain properties as initiated by the City Council. On November 9th of last year, the City Council entered into a development agreement with St. Peter Investors LLC for the development of that 66-unit multifamily development on the west side of Nicollet Avenue, or County State Aid 20. In that agreement, the city made an obligation and it acknowledged that it has committed to the extension of the sanitary sewer main from its current terminus at Warren Park in Standard Lumber Subdivision in a westerly direction to serve the St. Peter Lands LLC or St. Peter Investors LLC development. Developers shall not incur any assessments for the installation of the sanitary sewer main until such time as it would be located within the Clark Street right-of-way lying west of the Nicollet Avenue CASA 20 right-of-way. The city further commits that the sanitary sewer extension shall be installed and operational prior to the anticipated October 2021 project completion date in anticipation of occupancy. So the City Council has now established a deadline and have made an obligation to support that $7.5 million multifamily development. Bolton and Mank then designed the engineering of that sewer main extension, and it would cross lands that are owned by the Levon or Bonnie N's interest and the Ben and Joanna Pell interests. We are seeking a 100-foot temporary construction easement, and we would be seeking a permanent 40-foot easement on the N's property and a 30-foot permanent easement on the Pell property. The difference in width is because the pipe is lower as it enters the Pell property, and we wouldn't need as wide of an excavation to maintain or service that pipe. The pipe will be located underground and with no structures breaking the surface of the land. The site will be restored and then it would be allowed to be continued to be farmed as in the past. When they do the excavation, they scrape off the black dirt, make a spoils pile, then do the further excavation of the less productive soils or undersoils, make that spoils pile, and then after the pipe's installed, they put them in the reverse order and then try to get the topsoil established as uniformly along that easement. To allow us to continue, the city engaged John Foster of Foster Appraisals to undertake an appraisal of the land that we would need the easement. Mr. Foster specializes in easement acquisition and valuation. He was recommended to us by Dan Wilson from Henning Development Services. When Dan had his own company, Dan Wilson Development, we had used him as we had obtained the right-of-way for the planned future St. Julian Old Minnesota roundabout, and we needed an acquisition of land from what was then Holiday, McDonald's, National Retail Properties owns the auto parts store, and then as Hallett's Pond was platted, they actually platted the right-of-way for that roundabout. So we have experience working with both of them, and there are specific reasons that we have chosen them. One, because they are consummate professionals and are very, very good at what they do. Once the value of those easements were determined, we had made offers to both the Pell family, again, Ben and Joanna Pell, and to Bonnie Enns for the acquisition of the easements. Dan Wilson is doing that negotiation as an independent third party, which oftentimes is the best interest when they're working with the local government. The offers had been declined. Counter offers that have been made by both parties have been declined by city staff as being considered not to be in the best interest of the cities. While the negotiations continue, the negotiations with the Enns are at a standstill for one reason, is they're having an appraisal done of the property of their own. So that certainly takes some time. It appears that we are close to perhaps having an agreement with the Pell interests. And Mr. Wilson and City Attorney Brandt are what I hope I could say are working on perhaps the final details of a settlement that will be recommended then to the City Council. But with the October 2021 deadline and obligation made, the city has to look at alternatives to negotiating the easements. And one of those is the City Council then has initiated the action to involuntarily annex those properties as well as 5 others, and to exercise the authority granted to them by Minnesota State Statute, Chapter 414.033, which says a municipal council may by ordinance declare land annexed to the municipality, and any such land is deemed to be urban or suburban in character or about to become so if, and then one of the ifs is if the land is completely surrounded by land within the municipal limits. And that is why we need to engage the additional 5 properties to comprise the series of land in that area that would be surrounded by lands within the current city limits. You will note that we had undertaken this action 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when the radio tower and a sliver of Gustavus Adolphus property was developed. When we sent that to the state for their approval was denied. And their approval was denied because it was determined that there was a sliver of land only 8.25 feet wide that had been assembled with the cemetery that had never been appropriately annexed into the city. And no one can understand why Nicollet County had no actual parcel ID number for that 8.25. Again, it was just assembled administratively sometime with the cemetery. Everybody's guess is that the cemetery was in the city limits. And so then when they administratively assembled it, they said, oh, it's in the city limits now. That is not how the Boundary Adjustments Act works. Until the state tells you it's in the city limits, it's not. And so, as I said, if you clicked on the beacon map, that property 8.25 didn't exist. So we will be undertaking a redo of that action. But again, it's not timely since there's no residential implications and such. But to be sure that these 7 lands comprise all of the lands that are necessary, and understanding that we don't have time for a number of redos in this matter, we have sent it up to Boundary Adjustments, and they have had MnDOT pre-map this. And so MnDOT has said, and Minnesota Boundary Adjustments has agreed that if these 7 parcels are annexed by the city, it will be approved. That is comforting on behalf of the staff, because as I said, we don't have opportunities to give notice and do this, 1 or even 2 or even 1 more time. So that's comforting. The map on page 33 shows the properties that would be assembled. I believe it's shown in a coral or a peach colored. And again, the properties are owned by Ben and Joanna Pell, Levon or Bonnie Enns. I believe there are 2 parcels that are owned by Nicollet County. There are, I believe, 2 parcels that are owned by James Wilson, which are I believe, remnant from right-of-way and such. And then there's a parcel owned by Pell Inc. That is the Lee, Sherry, and Matt Pell interests. So there are Matt, Sherry, and Lee are Pell Inc. Ben and Joanna Pell are Ben and Joanna Pell. The city council has scheduled a public hearing, which was really originally set for the 25th of January. We needed to set that back to February 8th for notice reasons. The city attorney has provided certified mailed notice of that action and hearing to those 7 property owners, as well as then there were about 20, maybe 25 parcels that were contiguous or abutting those 7. And so they needed to get notice also. And then we did also send it to Traverse Township Clerk Helen Winter. I have had the discussions with Helen, and hopefully I'm going to be at the town board meeting. I've been authorized by City Administrator Prat to offer a shared taxation agreement with the township, where for the first year they would get 100% of the taxes they would have been due, which is about $800. The next year they'd get 80%. The next year 60. $800 is not nothing in a township budget. And so we wanted to make sure that we were offering them some fairness, but I will note that that is more than what would be required by statute. But we want to be, they've been good partners on a number of issues, so we'd like to be a good partner in return. As I said, the council hearing is scheduled for February 8th. Assuming that the city council would approve the matter on that evening, we will file the city council with Minnesota boundary adjustments as early as the next day. Send that off with I believe the fee was around $400. I would believe perhaps even by the end of that next week, since it's already been pre-mapped, we would receive word from Minnesota boundary adjustments that it has been successfully annexed. Notice would be given then to Nicollet County and Traverse Township and the city of St. Peter. Once it is annexed, then the city would have standing to compel both parties to provide the easements through alternative means outside of negotiations. If they were in the city limits, and only if they're in the city limits, the city council has the ability to exercise eminent domain or condemnation action and actually take the private property for a public use. In this instance, once again, the taking would be temporary, as we would put in the easements, and the farm could be continued to be farmed as it had in the past. But again, we would have a permanent easement and the ability to go in and maintain or repair, upon paying crop damage or things of that nature if it was during certain times of the year. The condemnation or eminent domain must be for a public purpose, and staff is confident that the installation of the municipal sewer line constituted a public purpose. If the council were to proceed with the action, we'd have to provide notice to the property owners and then provide what would be considered the city's final offer for the easements, which would likely be above what perhaps is the appraised values. The funds would be deposited with the district court, and then the court could provide the city with access or possession of that property within even 90 days. That does not determine the final price, or say the price of that easement has been determined within that 90 days, but the city could get possession and begin the construction project to put in the sewer line. The final price determination would likely be made after additional review and some court action at that point. Once we have possession, we'd undertake the bidding, which we likely would have had done in anticipation of the action, and then allow for construction, which is less than a 60-day process in this case to get that sewer about a quarter of a mile to the west. There is a resolution that had been prepared for your consideration that would recommend the council take that action to initiate the annexation by ordinance of those properties. But first thing I'm going to go through is we're going to go through a round and see if anyone has comments, questions, or are in need of additional clarification. And I think this time I start with Vice Chairman Fickner.
A couple of little things. When you take property and annex it like that, how does it affect the taxes?
There's a lot of fluctuation on that. The largest property, which is the Pell Inc. property, that would have an increase of a difference between township and city of $2,450.75. These are taxes 2020. That's the largest increase. The Ben Pell property would only have an increase of $80.53. Obviously, it's much smaller, but it also is enrolled in what's called the green acres. So if you have residential land up in proximity to the city, you can have it taxed at its farm value rather than its development value. So, and there is a limited enrollment, I believe it's 5 years. The Levon Ends property would have a difference in taxes of $287. Again, they are enrolled right now in green acres. I don't have it for the very small. Obviously, Nicollet County wouldn't have any impact, and I believe the James Wilson impact would be negligible,
Okay.
given that they're very small parcels.
Another thing kind of related to that is there, because there's sewer line going through, I'm assuming that's not, that's, if somebody wants to develop those properties in the future, does that mean that they have to then pay for the line that was then put in?
That is how the assessment policy works, Scott.
Okay.
So let's mythically say that we pay party A $50,000. That 50,000 starts a ledger, and when they do annex, that's the first development fee that they repay. So they'll get the money today, but when they develop it or they sell it to a developer to develop it, that accounting is undertaken. So also, you know, our appraisal fees for the easement, Dan Wilson's time to negotiate, those are also then assembling as a future deferred assessment, we call it.
Okay. And then, let's see, rezoned as an R3 multifamily. So that, if I remember the zoning rules right, R3 then allows all the single family on up to R3 basically.
Yeah, ours is what they would call a pyramidal zoning. So R3 is more permissive than R2. R2 is more permissive than R1. Actually, Ken and I had a conversation on the phone. That wasn't one of the questions, the similar question that he raised is why R3? And one, it's kind of what we use as our default, just because of that reason.
Right.
Certainly, if one of these properties are looked to be developer, the developer could request a rezoning. Or if they wanted to restrict the R3 to future single family, they can adopt private covenants that would then be recorded then and only then enforced within that neighborhood.
Okay.
And as I told Ken this morning, the city has no role in approving those private covenants or enforcing those private covenants. Oftentimes it's my best interest not to even know what they are, and tell the people when they come in, check and see if you've got covenants. So because yeah, the city is not able to enforce the private covenants. So
yeah, I thought that's why it was R3, which kind of leaves it open to future fairly easy rezoning or setting it up that way. So those were my questions.
thank you, Scott. And Ken. Your microphone's not on.
I just took care of that now. Yeah. One question and one comment. The question is that the sewer line, I'm assuming, would be designed such that it could be stubbed in for future developments.
Exactly, Ken. And that was one of the ends requests, is would the city put what's called a lateral on there, or some, you know, extensions outward, and that's not in their interest or in our interest, because we don't know what the final plat will be developed as. And so we want to make sure the sewers within the road easement or right of way, and without knowing how the future plat would be submitted by either the ends or an alternative developer that would buy their property, there's really no good way to locate them now without tying someone into a plat.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, so I hopefully their legal counsel will come to that same conclusion, that and there's still going to be significant construction of underground when a project would happen, that there'd be marginal savings, if any. So
okay, and my comment is just a simple one, that I understand the need for this, and I'm supportive of it. It would certainly be nice if it could be done in an amiable sort of way. So hopefully that'll proceed. But thank you.
Ken, that is always our intent in every instance, and I think we treat people fairly, and you know, I will say it flows down from the leadership also. So
yeah, I understand totally. I mean, yep.
Yep. Thank you, Ken. Chairman Davis.
I just want to echo Ken's sentiments about being amicable as possible. But otherwise, I think this looks like it's in order.
Thank you. Member Noel.
Great questions from commission members. We've discussed this exhaustively at the council level, and so I don't have any further questions at this time.
Yeah, I'll Member DeVos.
Just a question on, say the property owners decide to, you come to an agreement on the easement. Is there a plan to, obviously the eminent domain would not be necessary. Is a plan to still continue with the annexation, or would the annexation be pulled back at the same time?
If we were able to compel the successful negotiation of the easements, have them signed and in our possession prior to February 8th, I believe the city council would have the discretion then to not pass the ordinance and to not annex the lands. But once February 8th comes and goes, then I think we're locked into it. And once you annex the land, there's no going back.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, and as Brad and Shannon know from the role in the council, it wasn't 5 months ago, 6 months ago that we talked about annexing all of the lands completely surrounded by the city limits, not just these properties, but a few properties by Drannel Sales and Service, what is the and Drashko home, I think it was now, where Jim Bonilla lived, and the Flemnick home on the south side of Traverse across from where Kasalki and Jim Brandt live. The school, 22 acres at Traverse Green. And there are a number of compelling reasons to recommend that. One is that our zoning control would apply, not Nicollet County industrial zoning, which does allow for some uses, and not to say that Nicollet County wouldn't consider the city's interest, but fertilizer batching plants or asphalt plants or things. Right now, the water that leaves those properties becomes the city's responsibility to make sure it meets the MS4 requirements, which are the drainage requirements and stormwater management requirements put upon us by the state. And so it does not apply to county lands. Second, it's just assumed that some of the residential uses are consuming a number of city services, perhaps in higher likelihood than perhaps the rural person who lives by Nicollet, or even less those by Cortland. I don't have my list in front of me, but at that point, the council hadn't expressed an interest in undertaking that action. But at this point, it is our option right now, and the only way that we can provide for the installation of the sewer main outside of the successful negotiation of the easements, which are turning out to be more difficult than I anticipated, perhaps not more than some people anticipated. So if that answered your question.
Yeah, so it sounds like if they come to an easement agreement that, and I'm guessing that probably part of their motivation as to why they've come back to the table is now that they're hearing annexation, that's probably why they're more motivated towards working towards an easement. So
yeah, a number of those property owners aren't necessarily willing to be opposed to annexation. They perhaps prefer not to. I have reason to believe that perhaps there may be some interest looking for some development in that area. Yeah, I haven't had a single phone call. I know Mr. Prafke met with the Pell Inc. interests, and they understand the reason for what is being happening. So,
okay, thank you.
That was our round through. I don't have it written down in my notes what page there is a resolution, but I believe there is a resolution that would recommend the city undertake the annexation by ordinance as proposed. Would anyone move that resolution?
Noel will move.
A motion by Noel. Is there a second?
Fickner will second.
We have a second by Fickner. It would be appropriate to go around for one further round of discussion, and I think I start with Member Rosso at this moment.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Chairman Davis.
Nothing to add.
Member Noel.
Only to add that long term, speaking about the other properties that would possibly be annexed. I would favor annexing the additional properties at some point in the future. As you noted, certainly many of them benefit from being within the city limits and use many city resources, and I think that's totally appropriate, and I hope that the council will take that up in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Member DeVos.
Nothing else except to echo Shannon's comments that I think the council is, at least some part of the council is interested in moving forward with further annexation. Just of those. So quite honestly, what we're having is we are having developers who are in some ways holding up. It'd be how's the best way to describe it? It'd be different if this was a farm family and we were going through a family farm. But this is property that's owned by investors, and I think it's something to look at down the road as to how many other people could hold up a process like this. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Brad, the ends is part of the farm, and it is
Oh, it
farmed
is. Okay.
by the sons or by a son.
Okay.
So
Okay, I understand. The way I understood, I thought they were all just investors. So
yep.
okay.
And the Enzes were the developers of the phase of Westview subdivision off of Travers. So, but the balance of that remains their farmland.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Mr. Fickner.
Yeah, I think this is logical move for the city.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? You can just turn on your microphone. Ken, it looked like you were looking to turn on your microphone.
Rearranging my printouts, sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought he was pushing his microphone button. So with no further discussion, then I will call the roll, and I will start with Chairman Davis.
Aye.
Member Noel.
Aye.
Member DeVos.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Fickner.
Aye.
Member Rosso.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. That concludes the new business. I will report that the City Council public hearing on the Baker Gateway is scheduled also for February 8th. So we will get that, and certainly, obviously, in plenty of time for Mr. Baker to even gear up for his construction. So I believe his intent is to wait for frost out. Typically, I ask if there's any general questions off the agenda. Okay, I don't see anyone. Would anyone make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
It's my favorite motion to make, so I move that we adjourn.
Motion by Davis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Rosso. No further discussion on a motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Everybody have a safe, nice evening. And Cindy, you can stop recording.